Guys, it's Jacoya of Jacoya Gems. Thank you so much for once again coming back to view my channel. If you can do me a favor, go ahead, like, comment, and subscribe. Share this to your social media platforms. So on today, we're coming back from the Hebrew Nuggets side of my YouTube page. And this is something that's very important, especially in this dispensation, but in life at large. We're going to talk about breastfeeding or lactation for the medical terminology. We know that as of recent, there's been a milk shortage. And we also know that for some reason, breastfeeding isn't something that's talked about heavily in the Black community. So on tonight, I brought back once again my sister, LaDonna Jones. She has experience with being a former lactation consultant, and she's also a mother. So once again, thank you for coming, sis.
Hello, thank you for having me. Um, what a treat and an honor for tonight. I'm looking forward to this conversation. It's definitely something that is popular in a lot of different cultures instead of the African American culture. So I'm definitely excited to be able to shed light on that.
Yes, of course. So what I want to do first, guys, is start off just by reading a little snippet, and I'll post some articles down below when it comes to breastfeeding. But what I wanted to read really quick is some statistics in the Black community, and this is from a governmental website. And so it says African American women have the lowest rate of breastfeeding initiation as well as continuation at 6 months and 12 months compared with all other racial ethnicity groups in the United States. No racial ethnicity groups is currently meeting the Healthy People 2020 objectives for continued breastfeeding at 6 months, 12 months, 3 months. And so it was saying that mothers with lower rates of breastfeeding tend to be young, low income, African American, unmarried, less educated participants in the supplemental nutritional program for women, infants, and children. We know that that's SNAP and WIC, overweight or obese before pregnancy, and more likely to report their pregnancy was unintended. These final 2 points are important to highlight because African American and Hispanic women have the highest rates of being overweight or obese and the largest numbers of unintended pregnancies. And this begins to go on, so forth and what have you, and begin to talk about the medical benefits of breastfeeding specifically for the mother. And so when it talks about breastfeeding, the reason that this would be something that's medically beneficial for the mother is because unfortunately heart disease is the number one killer in the Black woman. And we know when you breastfeed, it begins to exercise the uterus, which ends up promoting weight gain. That's why a lot of times I know from my experience after having my children, older women in the family will be like, don't get too excited. You breastfeeding because your stomach could get nice and flat. You'll begin to lose weight. And a lot of times after you stop breastfeeding, if your diet has not changed, then you'll gain that weight back. But it says that according to this, some studies suggest that breastfeeding may decrease the risk of obesity even in the infant, but as well as in the mother. It says because it has increased rates of diabetes and cardiovascular disease, and women who breastfeed exclusively are more likely to lose weight postpartum than women who breastfeed non-exclusively and formula fed. So, with that being said, sis, I do want to ask you a few questions before you go into those medical signs. Now, as a mom, I know I have an 11-year-old and an 18-year-old, but as a mom, were you taught to breastfeed when you gave birth to your children? And if so, were you taught it in a hospital, from your mom, from someone in your family?
I was taught breastfeeding when I had my actual son. So I have a 20-year-old, a 19-year-old, and a 7-year-old. So I was taught and educated through actually my job when it was requested that I become a lactation counselor.
Why do you think that's something that's not traditionally passed down amongst us as Black women?
I do believe because a lot of times people don't understand that it's not, and people have this myth of because it's something that's natural that it's going to come natural, but it's not something that just comes naturally. It's you have to put an effort in. And if you're already struggling mentally and emotionally and psychologically, and to add on trying to feed this baby, and your body doesn't have the capacity in order to create and or to produce this milk due to the hormonal stress that's being released throughout your body, what then begins to happen, that milk begins to dry up because of the hormones that's being released through the stress or the depression or the overwhelmness that you may experience as a new mother, whether it be African American or any race. Having a new baby, it's very stressful. So it's easy to just go to WIC and or to a place and be able to buy the formula, because then all you have to do for some formulas is just add the water if it's powder, and or if it's formula, pour it in a bottle and give it to the baby. So it's much easier than actually trying to have your body produce something that's so natural.
I definitely love the fact that you brought in the outside factors that affects our body
Yeah.
as women. I mean, as a people as whole, but we're going to focus on us on tonight and the dynamics that stress can have with bodily fluids
Yeah.
at large. And
Yeah.
so a lot of people believe that breastfeeding is just one and swoop plan, and that if you aren't breastfeeding, it's because you're lazy. If you aren't breastfeeding, it's because you're uneducated. There are some women out there whom have not been able to naturally produce milk, and due to and as Sister LaDonna is going to go into, due to dieting, due to environmental factors, due to health choices, due to different things, the milk may not come in right away. And so what I do, I breastfed both of my children right away in the hospital. And it's my mom talked to me about breastfeeding some, but I took it up on myself. I just started to do a lot of deep digging. When I was pregnant at 17 with Angelina, I would sit there and watch, the birthing shows, and I would see how some of the different women would develop preeclampsia, and some of them had natural childbirth, some of them had an epidural. I don't know, I just got really, really, really deep into it. And so fortunately I was able to breastfeed both of my children. But I know that that's something that a lot of women are not able to experience. So did you recognize any, because when it's said when you breastfeed a child, or when you do co-sleeping or skin to skin contact, that these children grow up closer or more emotionally attached to their parents because of certain things. Did you recognize any difference in like level of clinginess, so to speak, between your breastfed son versus your daughters who were not breastfed?
Absolutely, because if you think about it, with breastfeeding, it's something exclusively done with you and that baby. And so that bonding time, you're feeding every 2 to 3 hours, max 4 hours. And so it's exclusively you and this baby. Nobody else can feed that baby. So that nurturing that baby may need, that coddling, that comfort, all of those many different things, they're exclusively getting it from you. And so then when it comes time to put that baby down, because at that young age, they're really sleepy, right? You begin to put that baby down. There's no other interactions that is more prevalent than that mother at that time when you're first initially breastfeeding.
I definitely agree with that. It's like the babies, they can smell breast milk.
Absolutely.
They can smell breast milk. It is a dangerous thing for a breastfeeding child to be in a room with pregnant women, because even if it's not the mom,
Yeah.
they can smell the breast milk. So sis, when you speak about the possibilities of stress and the outside dynamics affecting breastfeeding,
Mhm.
how what are some medical things that a woman can do to undry milk if it's dried up?
If their milk is dried up,
Hmm.
one of the things that they have to remember is they have to find the source of why it's dried up, right? Like one of the sources can definitely be stress, and it also can be medication that you may be taking. Or it may also just be that your body, because if you actually have a baby before the actual full term of 40 weeks, so say you had a baby that's 32 weeks, say that you had a baby that's 34, your body is not in full active mode, even though you release that placenta and even though you release that baby, your body still a lot of time doesn't kick into full gear until you are actually closer to that age. And things that you can do when you see that that milk is not really necessarily coming into your body, is not forming it as far as like pumping, even though it's not something as popular as most people would do, but it's one of the most effective ways. And here's why. A baby that's born between the ages of like under 36 weeks and under, when their suck is not as strong as it would be because they're premature, right? And so they're not at their full capacity level to begin to operate in order to effectively move that milk from your breast. And so because they're in a place to where they can't effectively move that milk to that breast, you can't tell your body, I need this milk. And so it begins to not come in like it needs to.
I've seen that happen to some women, unfortunately. Now, one thing that I do know is massages
Mm-hmm.
can help when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to the breast flow. I tell women all the time, I have Harvest Essence, my herbal business, and I've had some moms buy the perinatal massage oils, that helps
Mm-hmm.
open up the woman's cervix before labor, but also fenugreek and fennel oil. It's really good to help with massaging. And sometimes have the lavender essential oils to begin to open up those ducts, because we also have to remember that this is skin. These
Mm-hmm.
are pores. And
Mm-hmm.
so even though that there's something that's going in on the inside, which normally is our gut health in some way,
Mm-hmm.
shape, form, or fashion,
Mm-hmm.
everything that happens in our body
Mm-hmm.
always starts in our gut. And
Mm-hmm.
so one thing that I do suggest, because I remember when I was breastfeeding, sometimes your breasts get engorged and
Very
it
much.
gets painful. Some of us women produce too much milk, and
Absolutely.
it can be very painful. And so you have to do these things to massage and to stimulate. That's the word I've been looking for, to
Yeah.
stimulate the breast ducts in order to get them working and to be able to get them moving.
Yeah.
Sis, talk to us about the medical side. I just want to open it up to you to give some tips, some pointers on lactation, some of the health benefits for moms, some of the health benefits for babies. I really want to give it to you.
Oh, okay, absolutely. One of the things that you have made mention of was the engorgement. And so the massages would definitely help if those ducts are really clogged, right? Because even though those ducts are clogged and you want to stimulate it, when that clog is there, it can't actually come down in order to release that milk. So the massaging definitely does help. And also, too, you also mentioned lavender, which is something that's very calming and or relaxing, but keeping in mind that you have to do those massaging, and also too, running your breast when you're in the shower under like warm water would kind of help with that inflammation that you're having in your body, because actually the engorgement is actually inflammation that's inside of those ducts. And so
Mhm.
it's almost like your thumb is at the top of a straw and you're trying to drink out of it. A little bit would come out, but it would not flow at the capacity that it needs to, due to the fact that that duct is clogged. So those massaging starting from underneath your armpit and then working your way in. And so because people don't realize that there's actual, can you see my, you can't see my, people actually doesn't see that there's ducts underneath your armpit.
Mhm.
So as you begin to massage, you want to start here where it starts at. A lot of times people have, you can't see me, people have ducts that kind of like is here as well, and
Mhm.
also here. But you have to remember, you want to always start where it begins. And so you're going to start and you're going to work your way around, and you want to do it kind of in a circular motion, because what that then does, it removes anything that's there that's clogged. Whereas if you're pressing, you're just pressing it down. You actually want to break up those clogs that's there. So you want to do a circular motion, and you want to actually put enough pressure in it to where it actually feels pushed in. Because a lot of times, if you don't do enough pressure when you're massaging that breast, it's almost like you're pacifying it. And so you want to move it down so that it can be able to express and do what it needs to do. But here's one of the things to remember. If you're on any type of medication, you have to be mindful of those medications. So it's very important that you look into those medications when you become pregnant. It may be safe for you while you're pregnant in some instances, not all, but it's not safe for you when you're breastfeeding, because we don't realize that when we breastfeed, what we ingesting, actually not all things, but some things come through our breast milk milk. And when those things are then exchanged through our breast milk, it affects the baby. You may notice that some babies may be a little bit more drowsier. Some babies may be a little bit more irritable. Some babies may be more gassy. Some babies may be all these many different things happening. And you think that it's you not being a great mom. But in actuality, you didn't look into the things that you were ingesting that was going to be exchanged into your milk. And so even though we may need those medications, you have to then think about, before you actually have that baby, thinking about some alternative things that you can take medication wise. And because I know that some people, they deal with a lot of health issues, whether it's your thyroid gland. Your thyroid can actually cause you to have some issues with producing enough milk as well. Because you have to remember, breastfeeding is an on-demand thing. The more you demand it, the more the supply is going to come. But it's also motivated and or moved through hormones, prolactin and oxytocin. I can spell it, Oxytocin. And so those are the two that's operating when you're actually breastfeeding. That's what's happening in your body. So because you have a health condition that can be due to something that's hormonal, you now have this imbalancement that's happening now. You now have this new hormone that's now working in your body. So things begin to slow down a little bit, right? And so one of the medical benefits is to be well educated in what you're doing, right? And so a lot of times we're educated about so many different things that we forget the educational part, because we can say that it's beneficial for the vision of the baby. We can say it's beneficial for giving the baby the antibodies from the milk and things like that. But we forget about our own health being transformed to that baby. We forget about how our bodies affect what that baby is ingesting. So it's very important that we holistically think about these whole things, and we sit and we do our research, because without doing the research, you won't understand what's actually happening in that moment in time. And so again, some of those medical benefits are, they say that like it's good for vision. They also said because the body, when you're breastfeeding, you can actually transfer antibodies of any viruses that you've had, any vaccines, if you still have those antibodies, anything that you have experienced within your body, and it's good antibodies, you can then transfer that to your baby. And so it's sad to be said that many babies that's breastfed are not as sick as other babies that have formula. And the reason being is that they have these antibodies that the babies that have the formula doesn't necessarily have. And so they create this formula and they try to cause it to be as close knit as possible to breast milk, but it's not something that's authentic. And because it's not something that's authentic, when your body ingests it, what it does, it works your body a little bit harder. And so they say that some babies that that's had formula, they're more likely to have diabetes. They're more likely to have many different other things because their organs has been overworked to break this milk down that they're ingesting. Again, that's what study shows, but there are so many studies out now today because the body is forever being evolved in the sense of being known to men, right? They're forever doing research. They're forever looking into it. And so what may be prevalent in one year may not be prevalent in the next year, right? And so something else that you had mentioned, and then I'll be quiet after this, you had said something about the Latinos and or the African-American women when they were with the obesity thing. One of the things that we don't understand is that when we're obese, we have enough tissue in our breast to breastfeed. One of the things that I've ran into, because you are obese, a lot of times you have a lot of tissue. I can't show you my breast. There's a lot of tissue that's here. And so some mothers are afraid that they will suffocate their baby due to the bigness of their breast. But that's not true. If you ever look at a baby nose and you bring them in close, the nose actually goes up. And so the airways, they can breathe through the side and on top. So it's not educational wise, it's not known that you cannot feed your baby because you're obese. But here's one thing that's happening. Because you are obese, your hormones 9 times out of 10 is off. Your body is working harder. Your heart is pumping the blood through the body and it's working harder. Your liver is working harder. Like your heart, your liver, your pancreas, every organ is working so hard because it's overworking due to the fat, the storage of fat that's in the body, due to the breakdown that's happening in the body. And the body was not created to have this much weight. And so it's working overtime. And because it's working overtime, sometimes, but not all times, the body moves a little bit slower to produce that milk. But then again, in that community, whether it be Hispanic and African Americans, because you had mentioned that earlier, they have a lot of stress
stress, like all moms, right? They have this stress that's happening, and so that just adds into it. And again, stress is one of those things that drives most things up. And so you also mentioned, and then I'll stop, I'm sorry, but fenugreek. Fenugreek is awesome. Fenugreek is found in tea, right? And so once the fenugreek is found in the tea, you have to remember that the ingesting of the tea, you have to be mindful of how much you're taking. You always want to know how much of something that you're taking, because too much of anything is not great for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you put this tea in and you begin to drink this fenugreek that's in this tea, it's not something that happens within 24 hours, because anything you put in your body, you have to expect it to begin to break it down. But if you have things inside of your body, because your health is not able to move fast enough to break down and to take in those properties from that fenugreek, it slows down the process. So you want to make sure that you're well hydrated, that you're rinsing that fenugreek throughout your body. And as you're rinsing that fenugreek throughout your body, it can move faster. But a lot of times when you're first newly having this baby, you don't necessarily drink or eat how you're supposed to due to stress. And this is one of the things that we should tell the breastfeeding moms. We used to tell them, if you feel like you're thirsty, you're already on the verge of dehydration.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Yes, I thank you for mentioning that. The fenugreek tea, I actually have some, guys. Whether it's hibiscus based, but I love to add raspberry leaf to it as well. Raspberry leaf, fenugreek, and hibiscus leaves. I can make some up with different flowers as well, because raspberry leaf is an amazing herb as well to begin to prep the womb for childbirth. And so, of course, you have to run these things by your gynecologist, by your doula, by your midwives. But I know plenty of women who start drinking the fenugreek and raspberry leaf tea at 37 weeks, because at 37 weeks, then technically you're at full gestation. So if the baby is born, then there's a greater chance of it living outside of the womb, because now the lungs are developed and the different organs are developed. And so when you begin to take these supplements before the baby gets here, it will help prep the body, so when the baby is already born. But it says, according to verywellfamily.com, that you can drink fenugreek tea up to 3 times a day. And so this is one thing that we do want to say: we are not giving medical advice, we are not claiming cures, we are just simply educating based off of our knowledge, and that anything should also and always be ran by your doctors. And so the one thing that I do want to own in on is, because we have talked about the stress, but if we heal our diets in a lot of ways, because sometimes we can't always control the dynamics that comes with pregnancy. Pregnancy is stressful. Pregnancy is hard, even if you don't have any medical complications throughout pregnancy. When a woman is going into childbirth and to labor and delivery, she's literally between the veil of life and death. And now you're thinking about this child that you have to feed. And I know when I did breastfeeding and formula, and it was certain formulas that I could not give my children because they would have lactose intolerance. They would get diarrhea or start throwing up, and I'm like, well, as Afro-Asiatic people, our guts and our diets are not even the same. Every race of people has a different diet and a different type of system. We are known to be more higher inflammation on the inside of us, which is the root of a lot of the diseases that we see in us: cardiovascular disease, even a lot of the cancers and things of that nature, because we have a very sensitive body. So then when we begin to put our babies on different formulas that is harder to break down in their digestive system, we may see some adversities in their health, as you mentioned. But sis, what are some good dieting things? I know you mentioned staying hydrated, but what would you suggest for the mom that's not used to eating healthy and who says that it costs more to eat healthy? I believe if we place more emphasis on the actual health of our diets as mothers, then we wouldn't see so much childhood obesity and childhood asthma and childhood eczema and things of that nature. So what are some dieting tips that you would give a mom who just had a child?
One of the dieting tips, well, first, what I would say is you have to think, look at the full picture. If you're going to be a mom, you have to make wise decisions. And so some of those wise decisions come along with sacrifice. And so, yes, it can be more expensive to buy healthier foods, but there is also a lot of ways that you can also shop on a budget and still be healthy. Like you just have to do your research in the communities that you're in to look for the better prices and the better deals. And that takes time and it takes diligence. But here's the thing, in all the things that you have going on within your body in that moment in time, because you actually just had surgery. You actually just delivered this whole life. And if you want to be the best version of you, you then have to think about, even though in that moment we're only thinking about that baby, you then have to think about yourself. You have to think about what is going to happen now that I've had this baby. Like, I know I need to feed this baby. I know I need to provide for this baby, but I also need to be present. I also need to think longevity. I also need to understand that because my body has went through this great big surgery, and I'm calling it surgery because for most people it is surgery. Not all people do it naturally, right? Like, not all people do it naturally. It's a lot of complications that can happen. And so what you do is you then have your body in this imbalancement, and you have to bring back balance. And so if you're going to bring back balance, you have to be mindful of what you're ingesting that may have hormones in it.
Mm-hmm.
Because you already have an imbalancement of your hormones. You have to be mindful of the blood loss that you have. So you want to have some dark green leafy foods like spinach and kale and many different things like that, because you actually just had blood loss and you want to restore the blood loss. You want to restore your blood count. You want to make sure that you don't become anemic. So you want to have those green leafy foods, because here's the thing. Without that, your iron level will begin to decrease and you become lethargic and you will become very, very fatigued, not being able to stand and be the great mother that you want to be. And then also too, you have to think about it. Even though your body has went through all these many different things, you then still have to break down food. Your digestive tract has to still break things down. And when you're pregnant, a lot of times your gestational tract is not at its normal rate. Like, it does a lot of abnormal things. So you have to bring back that good stuff back to your gut. You have to like nourish your gut and make sure that your gut is doing what it needs to do. You want to make sure that you're having some beets. You want to make sure that you're adding some turmeric, which is an anti-inflammatory. You want to make sure you add that turmeric, because what's happening, everything is inflamed. Did you look at your ankles? You're retaining fluids. You're retaining these fluids. And so you want to be able to release those things. And so you want to have cucumbers. You want to be able to have things that will release those fluids that's in your body so that you can naturally release them and so that you won't be brought back to a hospital. So you want to make sure you're having your good fruits and your good vegetables. And you want to make sure that you're hydrating yourself as much as you can. And now research is now showing that that doesn't really make a difference, whether you have a good diet or not. But I beg to differ, because if you're eating things like, and not that you shouldn't, I'm not saying like you should just be vegetarian. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is when you're mindful of what you're ingesting, you're being mindful of the body that you have. What I'm saying is that you have to take care of the inside. And a lot of times we don't see the inside. And so because we don't see the inside, it's like self-abuse. We're abusing ourselves, but want to give off the best of us. You can't give your best when you're abused. You can't give your best when you're exhausted and you're fatigued and you're tired. Not because you haven't slept, when we don't sleep, when you're having a baby, but due to the fact that your insides are not moving at the capacity that it needs to. It needs fuel. It needs fuel. So if you're eating this hamburger that you ain't been able to eat for 9 months, think about it. Your body's gonna have to break that hamburger down. That grease from that is gonna cause you to be sluggish. It's gonna cause you to be tired. And me talking to you, I'm talking to you also too from a professionalism part, but also too from my own life experience. When I was pregnant with my son, I didn't have meat. Meat made me very, very sick. And so I didn't have meat. I only had fruits and vegetables. And even though it was one of the hardest pregnancy that I had, it also was one of the best, healthiest pregnancies that I had. And so that sounds crazy, but I was giving my body exactly what it needed so that it can give me what I needed, right? And that was my healthy baby boy. You can go ahead.
Yes, sis. During my pregnancies, unfortunately, I experienced spikes of preeclampsia, which was very, very weird because you know how I eat. For the most part, I would say About 15% of my diet can be absolutely, but you know how I eat fruits,
Yeah.
vegetables. People make fun of me like I'm a walking plant. And it was very strange for me. But then I went back to my childhood. I've had kidney problems
Yeah.
since I was a child. And
Yeah.
so I would drink all of these fluids, but my body wasn't pushing them out.
Mhm.
And so I love how you was like, well, are you looking at your ankles? Are you looking at your wrists? Because a lot of times women they are diabetic. They
Yeah.
develop gestational diabetes,
Yeah.
or just different things that begins to happen because of the stress that is on the body. And so I love how you
Absolutely.
mentioned the different fruits. I will highly suggest cherries.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Cherries help save my life. And I'm going to say that because I believe that fruits, vegetables, roots, herbs, and spices are here for our healing. And so
Yeah.
I will never forget, over the years after my back injury, I would swell and I could only walk for so long, and my ankles and my feet would become so swollen and it would be so painful. And so I remember coming back home from Jamaica, and I lost so much weight there. And I looked in the mirror and I was like, what did you do different? And so I looked at my diet, and I was sitting up and I was eating a lot of cherries. And so cherries are an amazing diuretic, because
Yeah.
they will try to put you on water pills and things of that
Right.
nature. But when you get on a water pill, it's working your kidneys even more, and it's causing you to urinate more, which makes you feel like you're losing water weight, and you will lose some water weight, but it's actually causing you to become dehydrated in some
Mhm.
areas, and causing you to urinate out some of the proteins and different things that it is that the body needs. And so, as usual, we believe that holistic healing and holistic health is definitely the answer, and it all starts in your mind. Now, we are not saying that every woman will be able to experience the pleasure of breastfeeding. What we are saying is that with proper education and proper preparation throughout your pregnancy leading up to your childbirth, that it is a possibility that a woman can experience breastfeeding. This is not us being insensitive and saying, oh, you're a bad mom if you don't breastfeed. We're addressing issues in the world at large, but specifically in the urban community. So if you guys have any questions, I'm definitely going to put down some articles, some educational videos, and the link down below. If you see scrolling across the screen, you could go ahead and reach out to support the platform. LaDonna's Cash App is definitely listed for everything that she does for us. It's LaDonna 718, and mine is Jacoya Gems. Donna, do you have anything else to give to the people before we sign out on tonight?
Um, I do, if you would just allow me a few
Go
minutes.
ahead.
You mentioned something that is very important to me, and it's one of the things that I encountered multiple times when um, teaching breastfeeding to mothers. They felt like they weren't a good mother if they
Mm-hmm.
couldn't breastfeed. They felt like they weren't a woman if their body couldn't produce. They had all of these emotions about not being able to do something that's so natural. But I want to encourage every mother that's struggling with breastfeeding. I want to encourage you to do your best. And if doing your best looks like putting your baby to the breast, doing skin to skin, trying many different things, and not allowing it to overwhelm you.
Mm-hmm.
If you feel yourself overwhelmed, then you need to take a break. And the reason that you need to take a break is because you're exhausting yourself with the process of breastfeeding. The baby can feel the anxiety. The baby can feel the tension. And so that baby become very cranky, very irritable, very fussy, does not want to come to the breast because he associate the breast with the tension. He
Mm.
associate the breast with the anxiety. And so because you are so tense and because you become fidgety, because you become so agitated, you just need to relax. So here's some suggestions that I would give you as well. Go to your most favorite place in your home,
I
wherever
can
you
say
like.
that. Yeah.
Cut on you a show on the television. Cut on a podcast. Get your favorite book. Put water bottles in your freezer and allow them to freeze. And then take them and put them around the house.
on napkins so that as they thaw out, anytime you're around your house and you're thirsty, you have water that's accessible to you. Once you're in your comfortable spot, kick your feet up. Get yourself in your comfortable spot and then have somebody to bring in the baby. Because then what it does, it brings you back to a place of solitude. It brings you back. You may even have to meditate before you can bring that baby in.
Yes, ma'am.
You may have to reposition your mind and your heart. You may have to just mellow out and then have somebody to bring that baby in. And then you have to understand the baby's going to cry. That's what they do. But once you're in that comfortable spot, it's all about you in that moment. And once you bring that baby in, then are you able to be the most effective? And so that's what I wanted to get to the women that's struggling in this moment of breastfeeding, because a lot of times you feel inadequate, you feel like you're not good enough, but you're more than enough. The Father would not have allowed you to have this baby if He didn't think you were good enough to have that baby.
Thank you so much for that, sis. So, to all you moms out there, be patient with yourself, be loving to yourself, speak positive words, affirm yourself. Like the sister said, meditate. Remember that your body just did something that only the Most High God Himself has the ability to do, which is to give life. And that's why you, as a woman, are very important. And regardless of what it is that your body allows you to produce, that does not diminish you as a woman and as a mother. So thank you guys once again for coming back to my channel. Sis, thank you so much for all that you said and all that you've done. We hope that this has truly touched someone out there on today. Please do share this with new moms, with with women who want to become moms. Just share this with everyone. Even share this with men so that they can know that breastfeeding is not as simple as they think that it is. We just hope that we have touched and educated someone on tonight. This is Jacoya of Jacoya Gems once again signing off. Thank you guys for coming back to my channel.